In the late years of the Cold War, there was a moment when Soviet radar operators began to notice something strange. Their screens were designed to detect aircraft hundreds of miles away. Large bombers appeared clearly. Fighter jets showed up as bright moving signals. Even small aircraft could usually be tracked without difficulty. But occasionally, something impossible happened. A radar sweep would pass across the sky and show nothing. No signal, no aircraft, no threat. Yet American intelligence knew that at that exact moment, a U.S. aircraft was flying directly through the most heavily defended airspace on Earth. It was there, invisible to the radar systems designed to stop it. For the first time in military history, the United States had built a fighter that enemy defenses could not see. Stay with this story until the end, because what American engineers achieved with this aircraft did more than create a new fighter jet. It completely changed the future of aerial warfare. The aircraft was called the F-117 Nighthawk, and when it first appeared, even many experienced pilots thought it looked like something from another world. Its strange angular shape, sharp edges, and dark surfaces made it unlike any aircraft ever built before. But that unusual design had a purpose that would give the United States one of the most powerful strategic advantages of the Cold War. To understand how revolutionary the F-117 was, you have to imagine what air combat looked like before stealth technology existed. During the early Cold War, air defense systems relied heavily on radar networks. Powerful radar stations scanned the skies, searching for aircraft long before they reached their targets. Once detected, interceptor fighters and surface-to-air missiles could be launched to destroy incoming threats. Over time, both the United States and the Soviet Union built increasingly sophisticated radar systems, making it harder and harder for aircraft to penetrate defended airspace. By the late 1960s, Soviet air defense networks had become extremely formidable. Radar installations covered vast regions, and missile systems like the SA-2 and SA-5 were capable of reaching high-altitude bombers. The lesson had already been learned in dramatic fashion during the Vietnam War, where American aircraft faced some of the most advanced Soviet-made air defenses ever deployed in combat. Pilots flying over North Vietnam encountered dense missile networks, radar-guided guns, and interceptors ready to respond at a moment's notice. For American military planners, this raised a serious concern. If war ever broke out between the United States and the Soviet Union, heavily defended targets inside Soviet territory might be nearly impossible to strike. Traditional aircraft could be detected hundreds of kilometers away, giving air defenses plenty of time to respond. The United States needed a way to change the rules of the game. The answer began not in a military base or Air Force command center, but in the world of theoretical physics. In the early 1970s, American scientists studying radar behavior discovered something fascinating about how radar waves interacted with objects. Radar systems work by sending out electromagnetic waves that bounce off an aircraft and return to the radar receiver. The stronger reflection, the easier it is for the radar to detect the object. But scientists realized that if an aircraft's surfaces were shaped in very specific ways, those radar waves could be redirected away from the receiver instead of reflecting back toward it. In other words, the aircraft would still be physically present, but the radar would struggle to detect it. At first, the idea seemed almost impossible to apply to real aircraft. Designing a plane purely for aerodynamic performance was already complicated. Designing one to manipulate radar reflections added an entirely new layer of difficulty. Yet the concept intrigued a small group of engineers working for the American aerospace company Lockheed. Inside a secret division known as the Skunk Works, these engineers had built a reputation for solving some of the most difficult challenges in aviation history. The Skunk Works team had already produced legendary aircraft like the U-2 spy plane and the State Route 71 Blackbird. These machines had pushed the limits of speed, altitude, and reconnaissance technology. Now the engineers faced an entirely new challenge, building an aircraft designed not for speed or altitude, but for invisibility. One of the key breakthroughs came when engineers began studying mathematical models that described how radar waves bounced off angled surfaces. The calculations showed that a carefully shaped aircraft with flat panels and sharp angles could scatter radar waves in many directions instead of sending them directly back to the radar station. The result would be an aircraft with an extremely small radar signature, so small that enemy radar might struggle to detect at all. But there was a problem. The shapes required to reduce radar reflections were terrible for traditional aerodynamics. Aircraft normally rely on smooth curves and carefully designed wings to remain stable in flight. The angular shapes required for stealth made the aircraft inherently unstable. In fact, early calculations suggested that such a design might be nearly impossible for a human pilot to control. For most engineers, that would have been the end of the project. But the Skunk Works engineers saw an opportunity instead. By the 1970s, digital flight control computers were becoming powerful enough to assist pilots in controlling unstable aircraft. If a computer constantly adjusted the control surfaces in real time, it could stabilize an aircraft that would otherwise be impossible to fly. This concept, known as fly-by-wire control, opened the door to entirely new aircraft designs that had previously been considered impractical. With that technology in mind, Lockheed engineers began building experimental prototypes based on the stealth concept. The first test aircraft looked strange even to experienced pilots. Its faceted surfaces resembled a flying diamond more than a traditional airplane. Every angle had been calculated to reduce radar reflections. The design sacrificed aerodynamic beauty for something far more valuable: invisibility. The early prototypes were given a simple nickname: Hopeless Diamond. The name reflected the skepticism surrounding the project. Many people believed the aircraft would never fly properly. Yet when the prototype finally took to the air during secret test flights in the Nevada desert, something remarkable happened. Despite its unusual shape, the aircraft proved controllable with the help of advanced flight computers. Even more astonishing was what radar operators saw, or rather, what they did not see. During testing, radar systems struggled to detect the aircraft at all. Compared to traditional fighters, the stealth prototype produced only a tiny radar return. In some cases, it appeared on radar screens as something no larger than a bird. That was the moment American engineers realized they had achieved something revolutionary. An aircraft that could slip past radar defenses undetected would completely transform the way wars were fought in the air. Instead of sending large formations of bombers protected by fighter escorts, a small number of stealth aircraft could penetrate heavily defended airspace and strike critical targets directly. The implications were enormous. Radar networks that had taken decades to build suddenly had a weakness. Missile systems designed to intercept visible aircraft might never even see the incoming threat. Entire air defense strategies could be bypassed. As the Cold War continued, the United States secretly pushed forward with the development of the aircraft that would eventually become known as the F-117 Nighthawk. Every detail of the project was classified. The aircraft was tested at remote bases in the Nevada desert, far from public attention. Even many military personnel were unaware that such a plane existed. And while Soviet radar operators continued scanning the skies for conventional threats, a new kind of aircraft was quietly preparing to enter service, an aircraft that would change the balance of power in modern air warfare. But the true impact of the F-117 would only become clear years later, when this strange, angular aircraft finally revealed itself to the world in combat operations that shocked military observers everywhere. Because once the Nighthawk entered the battlefield, it proved that the era of stealth had truly begun. As the concept of a radar-invisible aircraft began to move from theory into reality, the United States Air Force realized it was standing on the edge of a technological revolution. For decades, military aviation had focused on speed, altitude, and firepower. Fighters were built to outrun missiles, outmaneuver enemy aircraft, and carry increasingly powerful weapons. But stealth technology introduced an entirely different philosophy. Instead of fighting through enemy defenses, the new aircraft would simply avoid being detected in the first place. That idea fundamentally changed how military planners thought about air combat. Inside the secret facilities of Lockheed's Skunk Works, engineers continued refining the strange angular aircraft that had begun as a risky experiment. The early prototype, known internally as Blue, proved that stealth technology could work. Radar systems struggled to detect it, and its faceted surfaces scattered electromagnetic waves in unpredictable directions. But transforming that experimental concept into an operational combat aircraft required solving dozens of new problems. One of the biggest challenges was stability. The stealth shape that reduced radar reflections also made the aircraft aerodynamically unstable. Traditional aircraft rely on smooth curves and carefully balanced wings to remain stable in flight. The stealth aircraft, by contrast, looked more like a collection of sharp edges and flat panels. Without constant computer assistance, it would be extremely difficult for a human pilot to keep the aircraft under control. This is where advanced digital flight control systems became essential. Instead of mechanical cables linking the pilot's controls directly to the aircraft's control surfaces, the stealth aircraft used a fly-by-wire system. The pilot's movements were translated into electronic signals that passed through a computer before reaching the aircraft's control surfaces. That computer continuously adjusted the aircraft's position hundreds of times per second, keeping it stable even though its design was naturally unstable. To the pilot inside the cockpit, the aircraft felt surprisingly manageable. But behind the scenes, a powerful computer was constantly working to keep the aircraft balanced in the air. Another major challenge was engine design. Jet engines normally create strong radar reflections, especially from the spinning compressor blades inside the engine. Engineers needed to hide these reflections while still providing enough thrust for the aircraft to perform its mission. The solution was both simple and ingenious. Instead of exposing the engine directly to incoming radar waves, the aircraft's air intakes were carefully shaped to block a direct line of sight into the engine. Special screens inside the intake further reduced radar reflections. From the outside, the engine was effectively hidden behind layers of geometry designed specifically to confuse radar systems. Even the exhaust system required careful engineering. Hot engine exhaust creates infrared signatures that heat-seeking missiles can detect. To reduce this risk, the F-117 used flattened exhaust nozzles that spread the hot gases over a wider area, reducing the intensity of the heat signature. Every surface of the aircraft was designed with stealth in mind. Sharp edges redirected radar waves away from their source. Special radar-absorbing materials coated the aircraft skin. Even small details like panel seams and access doors were carefully aligned to minimize radar reflections. Nothing about the design was accidental. Everything served the same purpose: invisibility. But building a stealth aircraft was only part of the challenge. Operating one required a new approach to aerial combat. Traditional fighter pilots were trained to engage enemy aircraft in dogfights, relying on maneuverability and speed. The F-117 was not designed for dogfighting. In fact, it carried no air-to-air weapons at all. Its mission was precision strike. It would penetrate heavily defended airspace undetected, deliver its weapons with extreme accuracy, and leave before the enemy even realized what happened. Because of that role, the aircraft was optimized for nighttime operations. Most F-117 missions were flown under the cover of darkness, when visual detection was even more difficult. The aircraft's dark surfaces and angular shape made it almost invisible against the night sky. Combined with its reduced radar signature, this allowed it to approach targets that would be far too dangerous for conventional aircraft. Training for this new type of mission took place at one of the most secret air bases in the United States. Hidden in the Nevada desert, Tonopah Test Range Airport became the operational home of the F-117 program. The base itself was surrounded by restricted airspace and guarded by layers of security. Pilots assigned to the program often told their families that they were flying other aircraft types. Even many members of the military had no idea that the stealth fighter existed. The secrecy surrounding the aircraft was extraordinary. The planes were stored in hangars during the day and typically flew only at night. Pilots wore civilian clothing when traveling to and from the base to avoid attracting attention. For years, the aircraft operated entirely outside the public eye, its existence known only to a small circle of engineers, intelligence officials, and selected Air Force personnel. Inside those secret hangars, however, the future of aerial warfare was taking shape. By the early 1980s, the F-117 Nighthawk had entered operational service with the United States Air Force. The aircraft's official designation as a fighter was somewhat misleading. It was closer to a stealth attack aircraft, designed specifically to strike high-value targets deep inside enemy territory. Each aircraft carried precision-guided bombs inside internal weapon bays. This internal storage was another crucial aspect of stealth design. External weapons mounted on pylons would dramatically increase radar reflections, making the aircraft easier to detect. By carrying its weapons internally, the F-117 preserved its stealth characteristics while still delivering powerful precision strikes. And precision was exactly what the aircraft was built for. Advanced targeting systems allowed pilots to identify and destroy specific targets with remarkable accuracy. Radar installations, command bunkers, air defense centers, and other critical facilities could be eliminated in the opening moments of a conflict. This was the strategic purpose of the stealth fighter. Instead of overwhelming enemy defenses with large numbers of aircraft, a small number of stealth aircraft could slip through radar networks and strike the most important targets first. Once those defenses were weakened or destroyed, conventional aircraft could follow safely. In other words, the stealth fighter was designed to open the door for the rest of the Air Force. For years, this revolutionary capability remained hidden from the world. Rumors occasionally surfaced about strange aircraft seen flying over the Nevada desert, but few people understood what was really happening. Then, in the late 1980s, the United States made a surprising decision. After nearly a decade of secrecy, the existence of the F-117 was finally revealed to the public. Images of strange black aircraft appeared in newspapers and television broadcasts around the world. Aviation experts immediately recognized that this was something entirely new, an aircraft built not for speed, not for maneuverability, but for invisibility. But the real test of the stealth fighter would not come during demonstrations or press briefings. The true measure of its success would come in combat, when the aircraft would face real radar networks, real missile systems, and real enemy defenses. And when that moment finally arrived, the world would see just how dramatically the rules of air warfare had changed. When the existence of the F-117 Nighthawk was finally revealed to the public in the late 1980s, the reaction across the world was immediate. Aviation experts studied the photographs with disbelief. The aircraft didn't look like any fighter that had ever been built before. Its sharp edges and flat panels seemed almost unnatural compared to the smooth aerodynamic curves of traditional aircraft. Some critics even joked that it looked like a machine designed by a computer rather than by an engineer. But in many ways, that was exactly what it was. The strange geometry of the F-117 was not an aesthetic choice. Every surface had been calculated with extraordinary precision, designed to manipulate radar waves in ways that conventional aircraft never could. Instead of reflecting radar energy back toward the source, the aircraft surfaces scattered those waves in multiple directions. To radar systems, the aircraft simply did not appear as a normal target. To many observers outside the classified world of military research, the idea still sounded almost unbelievable. How could an aircraft weighing tens of thousands of pounds simply disappear from radar screens? The answer lay in decades of research that had quietly taken place behind closed doors. American engineers had spent years studying radar physics, experimenting with shapes and materials that could reduce the radar cross-section of an aircraft. The result was a machine that fundamentally changed how detection systems worked. Radar systems rely on receiving a reflection from an object in the sky. When a radar wave strikes a conventional aircraft, the smooth surfaces act almost like mirrors, reflecting energy back toward a radar antenna. This creates a strong return signal, allowing radar operators to see the aircraft clearly on their screens. But the F-117 surfaces were not smooth. They were angled in such a way that radar waves were deflected away from the radar station. Instead of bouncing directly back toward the receiver, the energy scattered harmlessly into the sky. Combined with radar-absorbing materials that coated the aircraft surface, this dramatically reduced the strength of the radar signal. To a radar operator, the aircraft might appear as nothing more than a tiny speck, or sometimes nothing at all. This concept became known as low observable technology, but in everyday language, it was simply called stealth. Yet stealth alone was not enough to guarantee success. The aircraft still needed to navigate through some of the most sophisticated air defense networks in the world. Soviet radar systems and surface-to-air missiles had been designed specifically to defend against high-speed bombers and fighter aircraft. These systems were layered together in complex defensive networks capable of detecting, tracking, and destroying incoming threats. For decades, military strategists had assumed that penetrating these defenses would require overwhelming force. Massive waves of aircraft supported by electronic warfare and escort fighters. The F-117 offered a completely different approach. Instead of sending hundreds of aircraft into contested airspace, a small number of stealth aircraft could quietly slip past radar coverage and strike the most important targets first. Radar installations, command centers, communication hubs, and missile batteries could be destroyed before enemy defenses even realized an attack had begun. In essence, the stealth fighter allowed the United States to attack the very systems designed to stop an attack. This concept became central to American air power doctrine. But until the aircraft faced a real combat environment, the theory remained unproven. The opportunity to test stealth technology in actual combat arrived sooner than many expected. In December 1989, the United States launched Operation Just Cause, the military operation to remove the regime of Manuel Noriega in Panama. Although the conflict was relatively small compared to the Cold War scenarios the aircraft had been designed for, it provided an opportunity to test the F-117 in a real operational environment. During the operation, stealth aircraft were used to strike strategic targets while minimizing the risk to American forces. The missions demonstrated the aircraft's ability to approach targets with little warning and deliver precision-guided weapons with remarkable accuracy. But the true test of the F-117 would come just a few years later, during one of the most significant conflicts of the post-Cold War era. In 1991, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, the United States assembled a massive international coalition to push Iraqi forces out of the region. The operation that followed, known as Operation Desert Storm, will become one of the most technologically advanced air campaigns in history. Iraq possessed one of the largest and most sophisticated air defense networks outside the Soviet Union. Radar systems, anti-aircraft guns, and surface-to-air missiles protected key military and government facilities across the country. In previous wars, attacking such a network would have required enormous numbers of aircraft and carried significant risk. This time, the United States had something new, the F-117 Nighthawk. On the first night of the air campaign, stealth fighters were tasked with some of the most dangerous missions of the entire war. Their targets included heavily defended command bunkers, communication centers, and radar installations deep inside Iraqi territory. Flying under the cover of darkness, the stealth aircraft approached their targets undetected. Iraqi radar operators scanned their screens, searching for incoming aircraft, but the stealth fighters were already overhead. One by one, precision-guided bombs struck key targets across Baghdad and other strategic locations. Command facilities were destroyed, radar sites went silent, and the Iraqi air defense network began to collapse. By the time conventional aircraft entered Iraqi airspace in larger numbers, many of the most dangerous defenses had already been eliminated. The stealth fighter had done exactly what it had been designed to do. It had opened the door. Over the course of the war, the F-117 flew more than 1,000 combat missions. Despite operating over some of the most heavily defended regions of Iraq, not a single stealth aircraft was lost in combat during the conflict. For military observers around the world, the implications were impossible to ignore. A small fleet of stealth aircraft had successfully penetrated a major air defense network and struck critical targets with extraordinary precision. The age of stealth had arrived, and the aircraft that many people once thought looked too strange to fly had just proven that it could change the entire balance of air warfare. By the time the dust settled after Operation Desert Storm, the world had seen something entirely new. For decades, military aviation had been defined by speed, altitude, and raw firepower. Fighter jets competed to fly faster, climb higher, and carry more weapons. But the F-117 Nighthawk had demonstrated a different kind of power, the power of invisibility. During the opening nights of the Gulf War, when coalition aircraft began striking targets across Iraq, the F-117 was given some of the most dangerous assignments in the entire campaign. These missions targeted heavily defended command bunkers, radar installations, and air defense coordination centers located in the heart of Baghdad. In previous wars, attacking such targets would have required massive formations of aircraft supported by electronic jamming and escort fighters. This time, only a handful of stealth aircraft were needed. Flying under the cover of darkness, the Nighthawks approached their targets almost silently. Iraqi radar operators searched their screens for incoming threats, but the stealth aircraft barely appeared on radar at all. By the time bombs began falling on key military installations, the Iraqi defense network was already collapsing from within. The effect was dramatic. Precision-guided weapons struck their targets with incredible accuracy, disabling communication centers and destroying radar sites that coordinated Iraq's defensive systems. Without those systems, Iraqi air defenses became disorganized and ineffective, allowing hundreds of conventional aircraft to enter the airspace safely in the hours that followed. In a very real sense, the stealth fighters had changed the entire dynamic of the air campaign. They had struck first, blinding the enemy before the larger force arrived. For military planners around the world, the implications were impossible to ignore. A relatively small number of stealth aircraft had achieved results that would once have required massive air operations. The concept of air superiority had been rewritten, but the importance of the F-117 went beyond its performance in combat. It proved that the United States had achieved a level of technological innovation that few other nations could match. Stealth technology was not just about shaping aircraft differently. It required advances in radar physics, materials science, computer flight controls, and precision weapon systems. Each of those fields had to work together perfectly to make the aircraft effective. The Nighthawk was a result of years of secret research, engineering creativity, and an enormous national investment in advanced aerospace technology. And it represented something that had become a defining feature of American military power during the Cold War: the ability to solve problems that seemed impossible. Throughout the Cold War, both superpowers raced to develop new technologies that could provide an advantage in a potential conflict. The Soviet Union built powerful missile systems and vast radar networks designed to protect its territory from attack. But the F-117 demonstrated that even the most sophisticated defense systems could have weaknesses if the right technology was developed to exploit them. Stealth aircraft did not destroy radar networks directly. They made them irrelevant. That realization changed military strategy across the world. Nations began investing heavily in new radar technologies designed to detect stealth aircraft. Engineers studied different frequencies and sensor systems in an effort to overcome the stealth advantage. Meanwhile, the United States continued refining the concept, developing even more advanced stealth aircraft in the decades that followed. Aircraft such as the B-2 Spirit and later the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II built upon the foundations established by the Nighthawk. Each generation improved the stealth concept further, integrating advanced sensors, networking capabilities, and more sophisticated materials. But the F-117 remained the pioneer. It was the aircraft that proved the concept could work in real combat conditions. Interestingly, despite its success, the F-117 was never intended to remain in service forever. Its design focused entirely on stealth and precision strike, and as technology advanced, newer aircraft could perform similar missions with greater versatility. In 2008, after more than 2 decades of service, the U.S. Air Force officially retired the Nighthawk from active duty. Even so, the aircraft legacy remains profound. It marked a moment when stealth technology moved from experimental theory to operational reality. It showed that aircraft could survive not by flying faster than enemy defenses, but by avoiding detection entirely. And perhaps most importantly, it demonstrated once again how American engineering and innovation could reshape the battlefield. The Cold War was filled with dramatic confrontations, nuclear standoffs, and moments of intense geopolitical tension. But many of its most decisive victories were technological rather than political. They occurred in laboratories, design rooms, and secret test ranges where engineers and scientists pushed the limits of what machines could do. The F-117 Nighthawk was one of those victories. It began as an idea that seemed almost impossible, a fighter jet that radar could not see. Through years of experimentation, calculation, and determination, that idea became reality. And when it finally appeared in combat, it changed the way the world understood air warfare. Today, stealth technology has become a central feature of modern military aviation. Nations across the globe continue to study and develop aircraft designed to reduce their radar signatures. Yet the foundation for all of those efforts can be traced back to the strange, angular aircraft that first flew secretly over the Nevada desert decades ago. The F-117 did not look like the future of aviation, but it was. And in the silent skies of the Cold War, it proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one the enemy never sees coming.